Years ago, my dad met Harold through mutual friends, and they hit it off. I was 18 and in college when I met him, and we never had a close relationship. However, he always seemed to think of himself as a family friend, and was extremely infantilizing and condescending towards me. Every time I saw him, I'd try to tell myself it wasn't that bad, only for him to prove me wrong less than a minute later. Harold would disrespect my boundaries, say things like "You're not 19, you're a baby" while I was talking to other people, and patronize me, my education or my hobbies whenever he had the chance. He always noticed that annoyed me, to which he'd playfully ask if I hated him. I always said no, but only for my father's sake. The final straw came the day Harold interrupted a barbecue to say, "I really like you, even though you're an impolite brat." I was 20 years old. I'd been quiet all day, working on a paper during the barbecue, but replied patiently and politely whenever anyone addressed me. And even if that hadn't been the case, I knew he didn't have the right to talk to me like that. After that, I started making an effort to avoid any events I knew he'd be attending. Yesterday was my father's girlfriend's birthday. They threw a small lunch party at my dad's apartment. I went there with my fiancée and our 6-month-old son. Harold was there. I hadn't seen him in months, but he still talked to me as if I was a dumb child. Never mind that I'm engaged, a mother, and 26 years old. I spent the whole party ignoring his helpful advice about me being too young to get married or be a mom. It helped that most of the other guests seemed to disagree with him. My baby spent most of the afternoon sleeping. There's a bassinet in my old room. He woke up hungry, so I went to breastfeed him and excused myself from the party for a while. I got back to jokes and comments, all from Harold, about how I was probably struggling if my son was managing to leech me away for so long. He went on to interrupt a conversation I was having with another of my dad's friends to question pretty much everything about my parenting. He doesn't even have custody of his daughter, by the way, and to make more comments about my age. I decided I couldn't take it anymore after he asked if I'd thought about giving my baby up for adoption. I got my son and told my fiancée we were leaving. We said goodbye to everyone except Harold. When we got to the door, Harold came to ask why we were leaving. I tried to make up an excuse, but he kept trying to make us stay. After a small back and forth, he jokingly asked if I hated him. And this time, I said, "Yes, I do. Can we go now?" He didn't say anything, and we left. On the way home, my fiancé said he was proud of me. My father called this morning to say the opposite, and we had a small fight, but ultimately decided to drop the subject. I'm sure this isn't over, but if it keeps going, it won't be because of me. This is far from my proudest moment, and a small part of me regrets it, but I'm done with that guy. Edit, Jesus Christ Superstar, that's a lot of comments. To answer some common questions, I don't think Harold is in love with me. Harold didn't tell me to give up my son. He asked if I'd thought of doing so when I got pregnant. It was still an awful question, especially since he interrupted a conversation I was having with someone else, my dad's girlfriend's pregnant friend, who was asking about my own pregnancy and delivery, to ask it. I don't like making a big deal out of things unless necessary. If I'm uncomfortable, I leave. If I don't like someone, I avoid them. It's usually less stressful. The fight between me and my father ended when I told him about the adoption comment. I don't think he gets that's not the only reason I left, but it was definitely what broke the camel's back. I really don't need my father to stop being friends with Harold. He's a grown man capable of making his own crappy decisions. I never told my dad I hated Harold because I never thought I had to like him in the first place. He's my father's friend, not mine. And I've been distancing myself from Harold since I was 20, meaning I haven't seen him much in the last 6 years. My fiancée was on the other side of the room and wasn't listening to Harold's comments. I filled him in when we got to the car. He's 100% on my side. Update 1. Hey guys. I wasn't going to write an update, but I just got some free time and I figured I'd fill you in. I'll start by addressing the, very frequent, assumption that Harold has feelings for me. I really don't think that's the case. His comments always came out as annoying and condescending, but never sexual. But I will say that your comments scared the shit out of me. And the fact that the general consensus was fuck Harold was weirdly heartwarming. I also want to add that, while I did regret what I said a little bit, I never doubted I'd done the right thing. I think most of my regret came from the fact that my 8 years of keeping the peace were over. It took some time for the relief to sink in. Truth be told, I've been wanting to do this since the barbecue incident, which was when I went from "I don't like that guy" to "I can't stand that guy." My father called Harold the day after I made my previous post. When confronted about the adoption comment, he tried to twist it as him being genuinely concerned about me being a mom so soon, and that he didn't think I knew what I was doing. He did apologize to my father. I don't buy any of that. The next day, my dad told me about the call. He said I should forgive Harold for what he thought was an honest misunderstanding. He also told me I should apologize too, since I'd overreacted by telling Harold I hated him for such a small reason. Many of Harold's past comments were made with my father close by. It often happened in the middle of conversations with other people, so he'd be too distracted to register them. He also wouldn't notice them most of the time. My dad doesn't pay enough attention to anything that doesn't either concern or anger him, and he'll most likely forget it until he gets angry at something else later anyway. He's like a meth head goldfish. We also have different definitions of what's offensive, so he'd never think they were a big deal. I told my father I wasn't exaggerating when I said I hated Harold, and that the adoption comment was far from being the only reason. I listed most of the condescending treatment and comments I could remember, including the ones from the party. He didn't remember any of them. I made it very clear that I'd hated Harold for years prior to the party, and that I had nothing to apologize for. I then stated that I'm no longer coming to any events Harold is invited to. My father doesn't need to stop being friends with him, or even stop inviting him to stuff, but he can no longer expect me to show up as well. I will ask him beforehand, and if he lies, I'll leave. My father called me dramatic, but I pointed out that I've been avoiding Harold for 6 years now and no one even noticed, so it clearly wasn't a problem. I've only seen him a handful of times since the barbecue incident, and only twice for more than a few minutes, the lunch party last week and another party back when I was pregnant. It clearly didn't ruin my father's life. I'm not obliged to like his friends any more than he is to like mine. There was some back and forth, but he agreed to my terms. We spoke yesterday about something else, and he mentioned Harold was upset. I ignored that. I'm not going NC with my father. Yes, I'm very well aware he's an asshole, and I came really close to cutting ties with him in the last few years, but I ultimately decided it wouldn't really fix anything. Maintaining my relationship with him has gotten a lot easier since I moved out, as we only see each other a couple times a month. He gets frustrated that I don't call or text much, but doesn't complain about it anymore. I don't see the point in going NC with someone who no longer has any say in how I live my life. I'd rather just take note of what my father did wrong when I was growing up and then make sure to raise my own kid differently. He's on thin ice, though, and has been for some time. He's not allowed to babysit, mostly because I don't trust him to spend more than an hour alone with a baby without falling asleep on the couch. I began pushing for him to start doing therapy back when I got pregnant, and he finally got started back in June. His behavior around me and my younger sister, who still lives between our very divorced parents, has improved a lot since, and I've made it clear to him that he won't be allowed near my son if he stops attending. This is the first time in my life my father has improved his behavior. It's hard to be hopeful, but I'm trying. And if I ever do go NC with my father, it won't be because of fucking Harold. So that's it. Overall, I'm glad I don't have to deceive anyone anymore. My relationship with my father is rocky, but I won't dwell on it. My main responsibilities are my son, my fiancé and my job, and that's not changing anytime soon. Update 2, Sept 11, 2024. Hey guys. Wow, I can't believe it's been over a year since I last posted about this. I planned on updating some time ago. These past few months, I've been caught up in raising a toddler, getting married, yay, working like crazy and rewatching Supernatural. Needless to say, I've been busy. Openly avoiding Harold has been working pretty well. My father has been respecting my boundaries. Whenever he invites me and my husband over for lunch or dinner, I ask who else will be there. If Harold's coming, he tells me. He hasn't lied so far, and doesn't usually insist when I tell him I'm not coming. Since my last post, I've only seen Harold once, at my dad's birthday party a few months ago. Yes, I knew he'd be there. My father promised he'd tell him not to talk to me. Also, some of my father's friends' kids, most of whom I used to babysit, would be there. I hadn't seen them in a while, and I love them more than I hate Harold. I ended up spending most of the party with my son and the kids. Harold didn't talk to me at all, so I guess my father was true to his word. My husband and I did catch him staring at us a couple times, but I decided to ignore it. I caught my husband staring back once, and the walking marshmallow I married actually managed to look threatening. I love this man. You know who did talk to me? Harold's girlfriend. Yes, he has one now. She interacted with me twice. First, she came over to coo over my son before making a comment about how he needed a haircut. Ha ha ha, I already hate you. Later, she approached me and said, "You're shy, aren't you?" I said no. She laughed and said, "Yeah, you're shy." She said all that in the same tone one would use to talk to a 6-year-old. I managed to keep my expression schooled. Otherwise, I would have told her I'm not shy, I just chose to spend the whole party with the kids because they were better company than her and her annoying-ass boyfriend. So yeah, Based on both my interactions with her, Harold's girlfriend is insufferable. In other words, they're perfect for each other. I don't have much else to add. My father broke up with the woman he was dating last year, long fucking story, and has a new girlfriend. She is not annoying or psychotic, and I actually really like her. They won't last a year. My relationship with my father is still not perfect, by the way, but it has improved. He's actually started apologizing to me a lot more often. I don't know whether it's the therapy or the fact that motherhood has apparently made me terrifying, but I'll take it. And I'll give credit where it's due, he's a very good grandfather. I'm also glad my father is respecting this Harold boundary. I very much don't want this man in my life. Honestly, I'm pretty satisfied right now. My little boy is thriving. Part of me really misses the baby times, but I grow prouder and prouder every day. Getting to know my kid has been fantastic. Next story, brother's best man speech at our youngest brother's wedding was just him mocking me for 5 minutes, calling me the prototype child and bragging how they bullied me growing up. My youngest brother, let's call him Phil, got married today and the ceremony was absolutely beautiful. His bride was stunning and everything was great and well done. His best man was our other brother who I'll call Jack. My wife and I weren't part of the wedding party, which is fair because we didn't ask them to be in ours 5 years ago. After the ceremony we did the pictures and a cocktail hour. It was nice to talk to some out-of-town family and old family friends, and Jack and I were talking about the day they all had. Very eventful for my now sister-in-law, but that's another story. And then everyone was called inside for the reception. We go in, and have dinner. My wife and I were starting to get kinda tired, but I told her I really want to hear Jack's best man speech, so we agreed to wait. I wish we hadn't. Jack goes up, introduces himself and starts his speech. Well, about 34 years ago, Mom and Dad got married and decided to try for kids, and they started with the prototype, my older brother. I should have known where this is going. He continued, they realized that hey, they can do better, so they got it right the second time. Me. Mr. Perfect. And I was. Our grandfather would call me Crusher because I would beat up on my older brother as a toddler. We were always opposites and didn't really get along a whole lot. So Mom and Dad decided they needed someone to help him out, and so they had this guy. Now when he came around I was like, yeah, he seems alright. So growing up we terrorized my older brother. Good times. He continued his speech, but I was kinda checked out at that point. I was, and still am really upset about it because I have always been the butt of all the jokes in my family. My brothers, my cousins, even my parents. I'm the different one. I'm very emotional and empathetic, which is a blessing and curse. I'm overweight, they're both athletes. Phil actually works for an NHL team. I enjoy D&D, reading and being a nerd. They like sports and outdoors activities. You get the idea. I get up and my wife goes to the bathroom before we decide to leave. Jack finds me and is like, you good? I meant to say at the beginning of my speech that I apologize because my older brother is probably going to get upset. I just look at him and say, you're good. But I would have appreciated a heads up that that's what you were gonna do. He looks at me and just goes. If I did that, I wouldn't have gotten the genuine reaction. I just walked away, met my wife, and we left. I asked her, am I crazy? Was his best man speech really just a ton of shots at me? She said it seems like he was trying to be funny, but not everything landed. And yes, you were the butt of his jokes. I drove home pretty much in silence. I'm tired of always being the butt of all the family jokes. We're supposed to have lunch with extended family tomorrow, and the only reason I'm going is because I only see these family members maybe once a year. I don't want to see Jack, or really anyone else from my immediate family. Do I have a right to be upset, or am I being overly sensitive? Update 1, November 25, 2024. Before I talk about the lunch, I'll share what happened to the bridal party as it becomes relevant why Phil didn't come. The bridal party was creamed by a pickup right outside the venue. The truck was going 55 and the girls were stopped. Both vehicles were totaled, but they were adamant to go on with the ceremony and get checked out later. So Phil took his wife to the hospital today. No major injuries, thankfully. So the lunch. My wife sat down with the family and we were all chatting. At one point, my uncle goes, Phil's speech was very sweet. I couldn't have given that without crying. My mom says yay, he had something prepared because he practiced it with me and he changed it after the wreck. Jack piped up, hey, I had a good speech too. My dad just says it was a good speech. It was all about op. I just got angry and said I thought it was weird that it was so focused on someone who wasn't even involved in the wedding. He and my dad got quiet, and then just continued their conversations with the people next to them. I avoided eye contact with Jack and we left about 15 minutes later. My wife and I went home and just proceeded to relax since we're finally getting a break from our students. We teach upper elementary. Jack tried to call me. Once. I let it ring. He didn't leave a VM. Then about an hour later, my grandma called asking how lunch was and she could tell I was upset in my voice. When she asked what's wrong, I told her about being upset with Jack. She said, I don't think your brother meant it, and I just go, then why bring it up? This is all the time. And then everyone wonders why my wife and I don't come around as often or leave early at events. I'm tired of it. She was calm and said, well, your brother can't give a speech and he thinks he's funny but he can't make jokes without insulting someone. Have you told him and your parents how you feel? I said yes, and that it hasn't changed for years. She just says y'all are gonna have to work this out. I told her that I don't want to talk to him right now and she goes, I know, I understand. You and I are just the afterthoughts, kid. Grandma and I are two peas in a pod and very similar, so that's where we're at. Thank you for the comments and the DMs. Update 2, November 26, 2024. Jack tried to gaslight me. I let things sit for a few days and decided that I was in a good headspace to send Jack a text. Hey, I've seen your missed calls and I am not ready to have a conversation right now. I need you to know that you really hurt me on Saturday. Your speech was nothing but jabs at me for laughs in front of friends and family. Then to tell me that you didn't give me a heads up because you wanted a genuine reaction made me feel even worse. I have been upset all weekend about this because nothing that was said felt like it was about Phil and his new wife, but how you would take shots at me growing up and then got Phil to join you. I told you that we were good at the reception because I wasn't going to make a scene at Phil's reception. They already had a rough day. But then for you and Dad to bring it up again Sunday at lunch, and for Dad to even admit that the speech was all about me, it brought the hurt out to the surface and I couldn't stay quiet. You and Phil are my brothers, and I will always love you too. Right now though, I can't have a conversation with you while I'm this hurt. I can be civil and cordial with you at family gatherings, but nothing more. These jabs and prods at my expense have gone on too long and they continue to drive a wedge between us. I am asking for 2 things. 1. Please stop with the teasing and jokes at my expense. 2. Give me some time to cool off from this. Time will help to mend this, but right now, I'm not ready for that conversation. I'll see you on Thursday. Love you, he responded a few hours later. I've talked to a bunch of people about this already and everyone I talked to said that there was nothing wrong with my speech and I didn't say anything to degrade you, or your character. I think you took everything I said way out of context and you are way overthinking everything. The other thing I was also told is that the best man speech is supposed to be a joke and never taken serious. Also, I've also been told by many people that they have heard similar speeches. Mom and Dad wanted a child, then they had me, the perfect child, and the third one was a complete accident. Nothing I said was hurtful or demeaning. Also, why is it that if they said if I took you out and said, our cousin's name, or someone else, then the speech is fine? That tells me that you personally think there is a lot of truth and you really don't know how to actually just have a laugh. Growing up I always hated that stupid nickname Crusher, and you know that. What was said that was so hurtful exactly? And Dad never said the speech was about you. I was angry and my wife could see I was on the verge of tears. I called my grandma and asked to go to her house to talk. When I got there she goes, so what's up, kid? You know, Jack feels really bad about this situation. He was talking to me about it last night and I go, really? Because that's not what this text says. I read her the conversation and she just goes, he's an ass that doesn't want to admit he's wrong. We talked for a little while longer and she's like, you are not overreacting here. If this was a one-time thing, I would say you are. But you have been putting up with this shit all your life. We finished talking, I helped her fix her phone to car connection and went home, not feeling better but feeling validated. A few hours later Phil called. We were checking in on how his wife was doing and she goes, like I got hit by a truck. Lol, I'm glad she can kinda laugh about it. He goes, we actually wanted to check on you and see how you were doing. We noticed you guys had left at some point without saying goodbye. I apologized for it and told him no, I wasn't okay. I read him and his wife the text messages and his wife just goes, that's bullshit. We talked yesterday and I ripped into him. His speech was not appropriate and you were definitely targeted. Phil added in, at first, I didn't see a problem, but when the two of us drove home and talked I could see how it could have been taken and we're both really sorry that was done at your expense. We talked a little longer and ended with his wife saying, we got your back on this one. Jack's a bully and I get why you and your wife don't come around as often to be around that. Just know that IDGAF what his opinion is, and a lot of the time when you guys leave things, I call him out on his shit he says to and about you. Phil echoed her and we said goodbye and we will see each other Thursday for Thanksgiving.